Hello and welcome to the Inflectra webinar on SpiraTest. We are starting the webinar now and we are recording. For anyone who's joining us on our YouTube channel, this recording is from June 15th, 2017. And my name is Adam Sandman and I'll be presenting an introduction to SpiraTest with a focus on customers that are using other existing legacy test management tools such as HPALM or other tools. This is the agenda for today's webinar. It's going to include an overview of SpiraTest, starting out with the dashboards and basic navigation. We're going to look at the requirements management and release management that falls under our planning section. And then we're going to move into the testing with a look at the test plan and the test lab, which is the names you'd be familiar with from some other tools. We call them the test case management and test set management sections. We'll then be looking at how you run tests in test execution. We'll then be logging some bugs during the test running, viewing and triaging the bugs, and then we'll finish up with some reporting. The presentation itself will be about 40 to 45 minutes in length, and there'll be time at the end for Q&A. During this webinar, we will be having everyone on mute, and at the end we'll have questions. So going into SpiraTest, for those who've not seen it before, this is SpiraTest, an integrated requirements, test, and defect management system from Inflectra. It's entirely web-based application, and it runs in all the major browsers. I'm going to be doing today's demonstration in Firefox, but I could also be doing it in Chrome, Safari, IE, or Edge, and I can be doing it on a full-size computer, or a laptop, a tablet, or a cell phone. It's fully mobile responsive. So to start out, when you first come into SpiraTest, you've got this main navigation bar at the top, and you also have this main dashboard that we call the My page. And for your users that are testers, developers, business analysts, when they come in, they're going to be using the My page frequently. It's their launching off point for the rest of the application. So in this page, we've logged in as Fred Blogs, our sample user, and Fred, when he logs in, is going to see My projects, where all his projects are, any of his saved searches, and then depending on his role and what's assigned to him, he would see any requirements that have been assigned to him, any test cases, any defects that he's found if he was a tester, and any defects which we call incidents that he has been assigned if he's a developer to fix them. We also will see a list of what we call test sets, which are our groups of test cases, and when we start to do testing, we'll see the runs that we're doing in the middle of appear under the My testing runs, My pending test runs. You can also subscribe to these items using an RSS reader by clicking on the orange square with the RSS icon, and you can also switch between the current project and all projects. This dashboard is one of several. They have some common features. They all allow you to modify the layout using this option here. You can also add additional items to your dashboard at any time. And this My page is primarily designed, as I mentioned, for the end users. We also have in the main navigation some other areas. So the way SpiraTest is organized is that we have what we call projects, which are in orange. These are the individual systems you're going to be testing. Requirements, test cases, and defects all live within a project. Then you also have the items in white. These are known as programs or project groups. And they are essentially collections of projects that might belong to one client or one department. And typically, you will want to be reporting across those different projects together, and so we have this program view also. So to start off with, if you are a test manager, the project view is activated by clicking on the project name in the navigation, or you can click it right up here in the main navigation too. This is the project homepage. So if you're a test manager or a project manager, you typically come to this page, and this will show you the key metrics for your project. There are three views. To develop the general view, which gives you a lot of information across the different aspects of the lifecycle. Then there is a focused development view that lets you see the developer metrics primarily, things like builds, burn down graphs, defect information. And then the more focused testing view, where you'll see primarily the QA metrics, the test run progress, the test status, the requirements test coverage. So you can see how many of your requirements have test cases, how many of those test cases have been executed, and if they have been executed, how many have passed or failed. You can also see the test results by release. And this is really handy if you may be testing multiple releases at once. In addition, you will have the test set status, so you can see the results of your test across the different cycles. And you can see the defect information to see how many bugs have been found by priority. You can also see the number of defects that have been found tied back to the original requirement. So if you have one requirement with lots of defects, you can drill down and find out if there's a common root cause. This dashboard is visible not just at the project level, which you see here, but it's also filterable to a specific release, which you see in blue, or a specific sprint or iteration if it's an agile project, which you saw in orange. If you choose a release, you can also see the individual test results by iteration or sprint. This project view is really useful for the project managers. However, it is not the only view in SpiraTest. There's also a program view. If you click on the item in white, that's going to show you the program dashboard for the entire program. In this case, we have two projects in our program, Library Information System and Sample Application 1. So you can see on these graphs the individual test coverage, requirements test coverage and test status here for each of the two projects, and you can see it for the whole group. That way you can see what is the overall status, and you can compare your projects. So if you're a project manager, a program manager coming in will want to be able to see this to know which project to look at, where the trouble lies. If you see reds and oranges, typically that's an area where you'd want to investigate. The system also comes with a global search that lets you search across projects and programs as well. And you can search by free text or by ID. In addition to the dashboard, which you've seen already, you can also access the more detailed parts of the system from the main menu to the right. So there is three main parts of the system within each project. There is the requirements section, the releases section, and the planning, and then documents. And then under testing, you have all the test information, and our defect tracking lives under the tracking section. So to start out at the beginning, if we go into planning requirements, all of the project requirements are available here in the project view. Under each parent requirement, you'll see we have children. You can have as many different levels of requirement as you like. In this case, we have our function requirements, the name of our section of the system, the connection of the main module, and then the function requirements. We also have some other requirements in different types, and if we show more rows, we even have some use cases as well. And you can store different types of requirement, including use cases. Use cases are a special type with a different icon because they actually have steps associated with them. Now this list page lets you look at all the requirements and filter by different fields. So any column you see visible is one you can filter on. So the good thing is if you want to filter, it's really easy. Let's say I want to find all my priority 1 requirements. There you go, that's easy enough. If I want to find all the ones that are priority 1 and have at least one test failure, and then when I've got a filter that I like, I might want to come back to this in the future, so I can always save this as a favorite. So I can go in here and do Save Filter. P1 Failed Requirements. You can just have this filter be yours, or you can make it a shared filter. And to retrieve it, you can either retrieve it from here, or available on the sidebar once you refresh the page. As well as filtering, you can also have custom fields. So for example, this difficulty field you see here is actually a custom field. We've given it 3 different values, and if I wanted to add that value to some of my requirements, I can use the inline editing to set that value really easily. And there's a little fill down icon next to the right of the drop down list. Hit that, and then hit save, and now they're all set. So bulk editing is really easy as well. Now, as well as editing on this page, you can also show and hide different columns. So I can decide that I don't want to show that difficulty column, but instead I might want to show a different column. And every user can have their own set of columns they can see. I'm just going to hide that again. There we go. In addition, on this page, you can also export any of the items by just going to Tools, Export, so any of the formats we support. You can also export to a different project, print, or you can create test cases directly from the requirements. So if you had requirements that have no test cases yet, there is an option to quickly create some test cases from these requirements. If we click on a requirement, and you'll notice also the special indicator on the right-hand side does show you the colored indicator that shows you how many tests you have for each requirement. And if I click on a requirement and drill down, you'll see this is the main requirement page. All of the fields for the requirement are listed here, including things like the estimate, the owner who it's assigned to, priority, the component, and the type. There's also a workflow engine. So right now this is a developed requirement, and the next step will be to move it as tested, or if perhaps it wasn't fully developed, you can move it back to development. That workflow engine lets you review requirements when they first come in, approve them, plan them, develop them, test them, and then close them. So you have that life cycle. There are also custom fields, for example, URL, difficulty, classification, notes, review date, ranking, and decimal are all examples of custom fields we've added to this project to illustrate the kinds of fields that you could have. So you can have different drop-down fields, different list fields, different text fields, whatever it is you need to categorize your requirements. Now scrolling down, there's also a rich text description for the requirement, which is the full-length description. We do support formatting. You can put code samples in here. You can put bullets. You can put italics, formatting tables. Everything you need to describe a requirement would be in here. Like that, for example. And you can just hit the Save button to make your change. There's also a comment tracking system built into SpiraTest. So you can use that to see all of the comments that users have logged. And if you write a comment, it does send an email out to other people subscribing to this item. The other important thing on a requirement is going to be the test coverage, because however good a requirement is, unless it's got test coverage, it hasn't actually been passed yet. So we want to make sure that all of our requirements, A, have test cases written, and B, that they have test cases that are run and passed. So the test coverage tab lets you manage which test cases have to be run for this requirement to be considered tested. Right now we have 3. 2 have passed, 1 is not run. But I could decide to add another function requirement as well. For example, this ability to edit book could be one we want to add, like that. You can also create a new requirement as well from this test case from this requirement as well. So if you, for example, haven't got any test cases yet that map to this requirement, you don't need to go create one. You can just hit this button, and it will create one and link it directly to the test case, to the requirement. All requirements in the system do also have attachments. You can attach documents, you can attach screenshots just by pasting them in, and you can attach links. So if you have a page on a wiki or some other tool that you want to be able to reference, you can just link to it. Otherwise, you can attach it. And the attachment section is very powerful because we also have a full document management system built in. So if you go to Planning Documents, you can see all the folders. For example, I can go to Screen Captures and see all my screen captures, or go to my specs to see all my design specs. All the documents that I have can be versioned and can even be linked to different things. So we have 2 versions of this Word document. If I click on the Associations tab, you will see that it's actually linked to a requirement. It could, however, be linked to more than one thing. You could use the Add Association button to add a link to another requirement. That way, if the document gets updated with a new version, all of your requirements that link to it will pick up the new version. There may also be documents that aren't specific to a requirement but might be project-wide. For example, your team's coding standards or client strategy. You can upload those documents directly into the system and manage them from here as well. Back on the requirements section, we have a full audit trail built into SpiraTest as well, and this is really important. Whenever a change is made to a requirement, we do track it here in the history, and we track the value that it used to be, the new value, who changed it, what field was changed, and why it was changed if a comment's added. We have these change IDs, and any change that's made as part of a collection will all be pushed with one change ID. There's also the ability for an administrator, which this user is not, to actually roll back changes as well. So an admin level user can always go in and roll back the changes to an earlier revision. Similarly, if someone deletes a requirement or a test case, you can also undelete it in the same way. And finally, on the requirement section, we do have associations. And when you run test cases and they fail, we automatically add a link to the incident that was found. And so that way you don't have to go adding links. All the defects that came out of this requirement from any of our test runs will be implicitly linked without any extra work. However, we might also want to link something explicitly. There may be a developer log defect, or a use case, or just other requirement that we want to link to this requirement. And we can easily link it by folder, by searching, or if you know the name, you can just type the name, whatever's most convenient. And then you can add the item, add the comment as to why, choose if it's a relationship or there's a dependency, and then hit save, and there you go. So that's an overview of requirements management. There are some common features you're going to see as we go into test cases as well, though, which I'll point out now. You can always clone the item. You can do it also on the list page. You can delete. There's the tools to do the same set of export operations that we saw on the list page. There's also the ability to email this to someone and subscribe to it. And when you subscribe, it means whenever a change is made, you will get an email notification. So that's an overview of requirements management. Our next stop is going to be release management. In the release management section, you can see all the major milestones of the project. The name of the release and the version number. If we click on one of these, you also can get more information. You can find, for example, all of the items that were found in this release, fixed in this release. This is the release. All the items that were found in this release, fixed in this release, verified. You can find all the test cases that are planned in this release, all the tests that have been run, and the changes that were made. So if the dates change or something else changes, there's still an audit trail for that also. Most of the time you'll be working on this page, and you'll be adding the different releases, which are the main versions. So for example, we have release 1, release 1.01, 1.02, 1.1, 1.2, and then under that we optionally can have what we call iterations or sprints. If you're used to an agile methodology, these will be your sprints or iterations. There's also the option for a waterfall project of actually having phases as well. And any of the test results you have that get reported against a specific iteration will roll up to the release, and from the release up to the parent release. So you can have test results rolling up multiple levels, so that a test that fails in sprint 1, in release 1, may affect the parent release if it's part of a larger program. So you have that flexibility to design the milestones and dependencies in this release view to fit your project or program. Once you've done that, you'll now start to move into the test case section. The test case section is where you start your testing. First, you'll be doing is writing your test cases in the test cases, and then we'll look into how you schedule them with test sets. So test cases in SpiraTest are typically organized by folder, and you can have as many folders as you like. You can have also subfolders, and again, to as many levels as you like. We've decided for this demo project to group them by the type of test. So we have folders for functional test versus regression test versus scenario test. That's entirely up to you. You may decide to group them by the module or some other or release or whatever else makes sense for you. SpiraTest doesn't really care how you do it. It's up to you. One thing you can do, though, is you can choose the display. Right now I'm showing you the test plan for the entire project. I could decide to show just the test plan for release 1 or release 1.01, for example. When you change that, the number of test cases may change depending on which particular item you chose, and the results will change. Because the same test that's planned and failed in release 1 may have passed in release 2 and might not even need to be tested in release 3. So you can manage different test plans per release. As we saw on the requirements page, you can, of course, filter by any of these fields. And you can view that at the top as well to see all the folders where things are that failed. You can also sort by various fields So I could, for example, show the priority field for this test case and then sort on it. So you've got lots of different searching, sorting options. You can also show and hide different columns, similar to what we saw on the requirements page. You can do bulk editing. There's also the option to do a bulk block or unblock, which can be very useful. If you've got a whole bunch of tests that aren't ready, you can just bulk block them until they are. There's also a workflow engine, so these test cases will be marked as ready for test, whereas if you have come to a test case that is a draft, you may want to move it through the life cycle to get to the next state. And the workflow operations are shown here on the top left. So this test case actually is ready for test. If we decide to make changes, we could pause testing, move it back to the approve step, maybe even move it back to the under review step. So you have the ability to control the life cycle of your test cases. Now the other thing we have is the ability to navigate obviously through the test cases right here. And you'll see all the different fields that you have. So here we have the status, the author, the owner, the type, the priority, and all the custom fields. Now, one interesting thing we do have in SpiraTest is the ability for suspect flag. This is a unique feature. When a test case is created, it's normally suspect set to no when it's approved. However, if the requirements that it's linked to change in some way, and this test case is approved, so if any of these test requirements here change, and the test case is approved, we will automatically mark it as suspect. And this is really handy because it means you can find quickly all of the test cases that have been impacted by a requirements change and very, very quickly review them, make sure your test case still applies, and either mark it as suspect and hit save like that, or make substantive changes to it and then save it. And the history will, of course, show the change as well. The test cases have, of course, as well as a description, all the different steps. So this test case that we have is a manual test case that has 5 main steps. We're going to log into our application, click a link, enter a name, choose a book, and click a button. And that's great. Now, this is a great script, but it has to log in first. And so what we did is, rather than actually just creating a login test step directly here, we realized that we're going to use that login in lots of places. So we actually created it as a reusable test case called login, looks like this. And we use the edit parameters feature to define 2 input parameters, login and password. So we can customize the text that you will see when you run this to use a different login and password. And then we use the insert link feature right here to insert that new test case, pass the specific parameters we want in, and then we have this link. The nice thing with this feature is you can then have all of your test cases reuse the same login set of steps. And guess what? If you have to change your login, because that does sometimes happen, or the steps, you change it in one place, and everything will pick up the change, which is the big time saver. As well as the test step editing, you also have a comment tracking, and you have test automation. If you are interested in test automation, the tool that you see here is our Rapise test automation tool, and that's a web, mobile, and desktop application testing tool. We also do integrate with a whole variety of other testing tools as well, and there are plugins on our website for those tools. If you're interested in Rapise for test automation, please check out a webinar on Rapise from the Inflectra YouTube channel, or keep an eye out on our events page. We will be scheduling future webinars on Rapise as well. For now, though, we're going to focus on some more of the features in SpiraTest for testing. So you've looked at how you can see the requirements that are linked to this test case, but you can also see the test results that have been logged. And we'll come back to this when we actually run a test case and want to see the results. The other thing we'll check on is which releases this test case belongs to. That's visible right here. And you can add on and remove the relationship between your releases and this test case. If you click on the Defects tab, you can see all the defects that have ever been logged against this specific test case. In this case, it's just one right here. And you can see any attachments that have been logged against this test case that the test is going to see when we do testing. The History tab includes our version control history that we saw in requirements, but this one does include also the step changes as well. So if you rewrite a test step or change the test case in any way, you've got an audit trail covering that as well. if you go to the Test Sets tab, you'll be able to see the test sets. Those are the suites of tests that our test cases being used in. And you can either execute SpiraTest test cases directly or as part of a suite. If we go into the test set view next, you'll notice that that's where these test sets actually live. And if I click on the functional test set window, you can see all of the test sets in that folder, and you can easily navigate to a different folder like that. And the test sets in SpiraTest will show you the number of test cases that are included. You can also see the test status per set. So a test case that's passed in this set 1.1, won't be run until you run it specifically in set 1.0. So you can run different test cases with different environments or different versions, different combinations of data, and keep the results separate by test set. If I click on this set that hasn't yet been run, this is where you can see how you would configure it. So I'm going to go into the set, and let's say I want to schedule this. Well, right now it's assigned to me in the owner field. That's good. It's also been set to release against 1.2, which is fine. But I really want to change the date because that's a little bit in the past. And so for now, I'm going forward, I want to set it to run today. And I'm going to run my test case by 4 p.m. I want to run it one time, but I can put it on a schedule. And I also want this to be a manual test. So hit save. If I wanted this to be an automated test, it's just as easy. You choose the machine name, and the machine names are all managed in this automation host section. We won't be spending much time on this today, but when we have a webinar on automated testing, we will be talking more about this. So keep an eye out for that webinar. Those are our list of machines, and that's where we would set it for automated testing. For manual testing, you instead assign it to a person. For automated testing, there's also this option to schedule on build if you're using a continuous integration server. Underneath, we have our parameter values. We have told the system that we're going to test on Chrome and using this login and password, and that will be passed to the test cases in my set. You can also set the parameter values individually, and you can show the parameters by just going here, show parameters, and you could then set a parameter value if you wanted for an individual instance of a test case in the set. So maybe we want to run one of these on IE and leave the rest on Chrome. You can do that by overriding the one test case like that. So we now have our test set with test cases, and I'm the one logged in, so I can hit the execute button. Typically, though, I won't be running from here. As an end user, I'll get an email when this is assigned to me, and I would go to the My page where we first started this whole thing, and you would go to the My Assigned Test Sets, and you would hit the execute button that is right here. Here is my test case execution, and the first thing I'll do is review it, and because it was a test set, the release was chosen by my test manager, and that's fine. The test manager has also asked me to fill out the web browser and the operating system. Those are custom fields that he set up in this project for me. He has the option in the test set of actually specifying a value like he did for release, which means I would then know which browser to choose, but he didn't in this case. He left it empty so I can choose it. I don't want the quick tour, but we do have a quick tour for those who use it for new, and we have that also for the main application. And now you come to the testing screen. On the left-hand side, you'll see all of your test cases and steps that you've chosen to run, and the navigator on the top in this block diagram lets you quickly step through it this way, or this way here. Whichever way you click on it, it moves you through the same way. Now, we do have different views. This is our classic split view. You see the split between the test cases and steps on the left and the details of a step on the right. You can do pass, fail, blocked, and caution. Some users, though, however, are more accustomed to a table view, and so we do have a table view as well, where you can do pass, fail, blocked, caution, add an attachment, add an incident. You can do that in a big, long scrolling list, which some people find more natural. And the third view is we have a mini view, which is how you would see it on a cell phone, but the mini view has an option to embed the application. This is a really handy option when you do have an application that's web-based, like this one, and you don't have two computer screens, because without this, you would have to alt-tab between the application you're testing and SpiraTest. But we want to make it as easy as possible to do your testing. So we have this option to have an iframe and have your test running inside this window. So you can click on this and still do pass and fail. Very easy. Just to go back to the main view, I passed that step. Let me just pass a couple more. And now let me actually log a failure. If I hit the fail button, I'm going to see the message telling me I need to enter an actual result for a failure, which is a good thing. So let's pretend we have a failure. I'm going to put in the error message. And I can paste a screenshot in by just doing print screen and paste, like that. I did a current screen. In real life, you probably wouldn't want to put the screen of the actual application in, but this is just as easy. You can just print screen straight into it. You can also attach files using the attachment tab. And then the last thing you'll do before you hit fail is I want to log a defect. Now, if I click on the incident tab, it's going to show me. Now, in this case, there are no defects or incidents already linked to the step. So that means I should log one. If I saw one in there that's already similar to the failure I just experienced and it's still open, you could link it and not create a duplicate. But this is a new issue we found, so I'm going to create a report saying bug on the book screen. Choose a bug, choose priority, and some other fields I have to fill out. These are the custom fields we set up for the project. You can decide which fields you want to capture, which fields are optional, and which fields you don't care about at all. And so we'll hit fail. And that has now logged a test result of a failure against this test case and that step. It has also logged a defect linked to it automatically. We can now move on to the next test case. For this one, well, let's pretend we had a failure that was so severe we can't actually move on. And that means that the next test is blocking us. So we'll say blocked by the previous failure. And that's what the block test status is for. Blocked is used when you can't proceed, something blocks you. Caution means you could complete the test, but there were some minor issues. So it wasn't a failure, but it wasn't a full pass either. We've now blocked. Once you've at least recorded one failure or all passes on the steps in a case, you get the option to finish. I should note there is an option to pause here. This pause button on the left will pause the timer that runs, because we are timing you, so your test manager may have put an estimate in for how long the test should take. The system will calculate how long it's actually taken so that you can improve your estimates. And once you finish, you can just hit this finish button. If you have to pause in the middle, you can hit the eject button, and that takes you back to the My page where you can resume it later. And before I hit finish, if I do go to the My page in another browser tab, you can see this test case that I'm in the middle of. And you have the option of resuming it or assigning it to someone else. The assigning it to someone else can be handy if you've got some tests in a set and you have to go to a meeting or run out for the day and you need to be able to give it to someone else without starting from fresh. You can just reassign it. In this case, however, I am actually done, so I'll hit finish. It warns me that my changes will be locked down then. I can't make any more changes. And my test has now been result logged. If I go into testing test cases, you will see that I now have a test failure on the 15th of June. If I went to the test step, you might see the same thing. Go to test runs, and there's my result. Now, if I click on the test run, you will see all of the executions of this test case in the sidebar, color-coded, and then you'll see for this run the fields of what happened, so I can know which release I was testing, how long I was supposed to take, how long I actually took. I know which test set I was running it as a part of in case there's a dependency issue between the test that came before. I can also see the type of test, the browser, the operating system. These are my custom environment fields. And then I can see step by step the URL I used, the login, the password, and the screenshot, and the defect. So if my result is specific to a user type, then having the login and password in this case could be really helpful. And the screenshot is always useful as well. And then to look at the bug, you can click on the bug from here, and that takes you into the bug. The other thing you can do as the bug or project manager is you can do the triaging. So I came to it directly from the test case. Typically, the project manager is going to be focusing more on the tracking section, and you can see all the new defects coming in directly from this page. So I, in this case, might want to find all the items that are new, and I might want to sort it by creation date. So So I'll just show that and then sort. And there's my new defect. There are these little charts on the side which you can use for quickly seeing the progress of defect tracking and treat defect resolution. How many are open, how many are closed, and then priority. If I click on the defect from the list page, it takes me to the same page I was on here. So whether I come from the test case or come from the main list page, I can get to the defect. And now let's pretend I'm the project manager. I'm going to be triaging this and assigning it to someone. So I'll go into my operations tab. I can also review the type, make sure it truly is a bug. Maybe they logged it as a bug, but reading it I realize it's maybe an enhancement. This doesn't look like an enhancement though, so I'll leave it as a bug. And I will assign it though to a developer. So I hit operations assigned. To save logging out, I'm just going to actually assign it to myself. And let me add a comment. Fred, please fix. Hit save. It's going to warn me that I've got some more fields to fill out. And you can customize in our workflow editor the different fields that are required. So I'll do that. So I've specified the effort and the start date, and now let me save it, and it added the comment as well. Oh, sorry, I put in the wrong field. Fred, please fix. Very easy. There you go. That's my comment. This was a notes custom field. So that's my defect. It's now been assigned to me. I will get an email letting me know that I've been assigned a defect. And now what I need to do is, if I pretend I'm now the developer coming in, I'm going to need to fix this. So when I look at my defect that's been assigned to me, I will look at the actual description, and I have my screenshot. I have my steps. I can see also what the testers did step by step. I know the browser. I know the login and password. I know where it failed exactly. And I know what they saw. I also can go back to my associations tab, and I can control click on that, and I can bring up the actual test run directly from here in reverse. So I can see step by step what they did with a bit more detail. I can also look at the 3 requirements this is meant to test, and that may give me a clue, because perhaps the tester didn't read the requirements properly, and perhaps there isn't a bug. Perhaps they just didn't understand how it's meant to work, and it's working truly as designed. So with all that information at my fingertips, let's say that I realize it truly is a bug, I would typically then go in and resolve it, and I might add a comment saying, fixed it by doing X, Y, Z. I'll choose like that. Oh, and it warns me again. I need to put more information in. How long it actually took, and the remaining effort, which is 0, because I'm done. Comment already put in. And the close date has to be before the start date, which does make sense. And there you go. I've now saved my defect. The tester comes in, goes to the Associations tab, clicks on the test run, and then typically we'll use the retest option right here, retest it. And then let's just say all passes, hit pass all, hit finish. And now you have passed and closed the defect. And that's a quick overview of the defect tracking lifecycle as well. The last piece of the puzzle is reporting. And reporting in SpiraTest is available in the reporting tab. There's a series of different graphs and charts that are available. And you can see here we have our defect counts over time, our cumulative count, our open count. Most of the defects in this project are actually older, so you'll see the counts are pretty high, and you'll see that one we just logged right here. You can always get a data grid. Same thing for the test runs, and you can filter it by release. You can also use the summary graphs. The summary graphs require you to pick any of the standard or custom fields that we have and graph it against any of the other fields, like this. And you can flip them too. So test case, we'll do execution status by owner. Let's flip it. That looks a bit better. And any of the data grids can be exported to an Excel sheet as well. There we go. So I've just exported to a spreadsheet. And as well as these nice graphs and charts, which of course you can customize, and you can add additional graphs by going to the add option right here and adding them to the dashboard. As well as that, you can also run a printable report. So, for example, suppose I want to see the traceability of all my requirements and all my test cases to make sure that I've got full coverage and give this to a client. I can choose the format, so I'll use Acrobat. I'll choose what to include. I'm including the requirements links to other requirements, the test case requirements links, and the reverse. I can filter by any of my standard fields. I can filter by any of my custom fields. I hit the button to create the report. And basically, it's going to run the report generation, and once it's ready, it will tell me, and I can open it. And there you go. There's a simple requirements traceability matrix report like that. In addition to that kind of report, we do also have options for document style reports. So let's choose a different style. Let's choose requirements detailed. We'll include the test coverage. We'll include the change history. And the other information you see here. We'll choose MS Word. We won't bother filtering it, but we could. We'll also could save it as a saved report for the future with a specific name. We could even share that named report with the whole team. In this case, I'm just going to run it right now. Okay, the report's running. Click on the button to view the report. And there's our report in MS Word. Each requirement is displayed, in this case, with the description, the fields, the comments, the test coverage, the requirements, the defects linked to it, the file attachments, change history, and then we go to the next one. And we have a test case detail report which does the same thing, but for test cases where you can see the steps. Now, we've been logged in as Fred. Now, one of the last things we'll do today is quickly give you an overview of the administration. And the administration is a very large part of the system where you can administer all the systems. And we will have a future webinar which will cover administration specifically. But just for now to say, if you log in as the administrator and you click on administration, all the administration is available in this web interface. It's categorized by the area of administration. For example, am I creating projects, changing projects? Am I adding users, changing user roles, seeing who's logged in? Custom properties will allow you to change the custom fields. The defect configuration, the types, the statuses, the priorities is all here. The workflows will be for modifying the requirements. Workflows will be under requirements. Testing, you can change the test case workflows and the settings for test cases. Email notifications are available here. Document configuration for the document management system is there. And then there's just general system settings, which you'll set up usually once at the beginning to configure your system. And the administration is a whole separate section, but it is the same web interface. And if you're an administration level user, you will have access to the whole thing. If you're a project level administrator, you would have access to just the administration functions for your project.